Howdy folks, in this video we are talking about a little bit of the sense of the imagery that comes up in Ep 1. And I've been bringing this up in the other ones. It's a film course at its core. We're looking at films more than we're looking at anything else. So visuality is going to be a huge focus. But one of the reasons I was bringing all of this forward in EPS 4, EPS 5, right? Because what we're touching on with episode 1 is very much an image driven intention with Lucas's film work here. So we've come off of the used universe and we start to see the unused universe, right? Everything is shiny, chromed out, looking good. Only when we get to Tatooine do we start to see the used universe kind of take shape, but like the Nubian spacecraft, Amidala's spacecraft, Naboo itself is just crisp, all highly detailed, very structured, very shiny, very new, very visual, dramatic, eye-catching, gathering this sense of beauty to it, which is very much opposite that used universe. So you've got kind of this like unused universe, and this is one of the shifts. You start to see that deteriorate as the Empire takes hold, and this is one of the visual arguments that are happening here. So you're seeing this shininess versus the episode 4 state of things. You get some beautiful, beautiful fight scenes in this. Ray Park is Darth Maul. He then has his lines dubbed over, which is like the classic. Apparently, this is like the Apprentice move, right? You get a real cool looking apprentice for the Sith for Darth Sidious, and all of a sudden you have to have the voice redone. Vader was redone, Maul was redone, Count Dooku was not. He was not as cool looking as Darth Maul. All right, so we have this very visual thing going on, to the point that one of the few people to give it a positive review was Roger Ebert. And the idea was that Lucas was going for something else, and this came up in the Taylor, and Lucas actually briefed Roger Ebert on this notion. He's talking about, I'm going for this visual jazz, this riffing on imagery. Yeah, the dialogue is not tight, it's not crisp, it's feeling a little clunky, but the film is not about that. Now, this is a cool idea, all right? I've got no problems with the idea in and of itself. I do wonder at what point it's problematic when you're ignoring any element of a film, right? If you are storytelling via characters and dialogue, well, you are obligated to make those a focus and intention. And we see what happens when this stress of the actors and the directors kind of starts to unfold. You get that Lucas is not really this director that likes to get involved with his actors. And so you get these much more rigid, stiff performances. And Taylor even says that it might be better to just lean into your fight choreography, because that's going to be the eye-catching, the dramatics, the real powerful thing. Now, you'll see in the saga that episodes 1, 2, and 3 are graced with wonderful actors. And so you get kind of lucky that you have Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn, so he can kind of work his lines a little bit more. Ewan McGregor really does grow into this Obi-Wan Kenobi role, and he attains this by actually watching the old Alec Guinness stuff and really trying to make himself perform Obi-Wan in the way Guinness really defines and creates. You also have, in an odd moment, I think Natalie Portman gives a relatively flat performance. I think she does well enough, and I think she does a lot better than many of the other actors in the films, episodes 1, 2, and 3, the prequel trilogy. Although we have seen her do quite well, even when she is much younger, in things like Leon the Professional, where it's really about how a director needs to draw these things out. And the reason I bring this up is because it's also about the visual experience of the film. Why would Lucas actively direct a discussion of the film away from this dialogue? And it's part of his intention, his aesthetic, because, gang, like, if you are not a fan of Ep 1, that's completely understandable. There are a lot of people who are not fans, right? The first soundbite of Ep 1 is shit fucking sandwich, right? Like, this is a common sense of the prequel trilogy. On the other hand, we're now seeing that there were a whole lot of people out there who really loved the prequel trilogies. Many of them are simply of an age where their opinions couldn't really manifest about Star Wars, about the prequels, about say Jar Jar and all of the other characters. There's this moment where you have the generation who had that as their first Star Wars experience are really finding their voices, and the actors of those films are really finding support with those that fan base. And it's interesting to see how culture within Star Wars and surrounding Star Wars has shifted. At least a little bit. Star Wars fans are pretty aggressive, pretty voracious, pretty um, unforgiving, unflinching. Lucas has been booed off stages because of these films. And Taylor does talk about in elsewhere in the book that you do have to kind of come to terms with episode 1. I will say that there is some sort of overall film quality that is less than A New Hope, than Empire, right? There is something that is just not doing the work that those other films do. There's something lacking, and it is very much tied to Lucas's time spent editing the film, doing things with CGI instead of directing the actors. The actors report this, but there is a lot of redeeming beauty to this. Down below, you'll see a shot of this wide scope fight scene, and it shows Qui-Gon and Maul fighting way in the top, and Obi-Wan hanging to the walkway, way down bottom left. Check that out in the week 5 folder. I've got that screenshot there for you. And so this visual thing has an intensity and a power to it. Lucas may have went a little too far in certain directions, may have not overcome his own issues with directing actors. He probably should have recognized his shortcomings there, but the man has done a brilliant visual piece, and as always, the music is on point. John Williams has it dialed in, no problems. But what we're seeing as far as this like visual jazz, this poetry of image, we're seeing that Lucas has this deliberate and beautiful vision for the Star Wars universe. And Taylor talks about it as like one of his friends in coming to terms with episode 1, which I think is something that all Star Wars fans who struggled with episode 1, there are a lot out there that don't, that love it, that have no problems with it. And great, they didn't have to come to terms with anything. But one of the recommended ways, one of the ways that Taylor talks about in coming to terms with episode 1 is a friend of his. She muted the movie and played the soundtrack in the background, and she found that it was this really deep, dynamic, beautiful, brilliant visual experience. And so That was super helpful to me. I didn't go as dramatically as like muting the movie and playing something else. I just decided to watch it as this experience that is more visual. And let's face it, that's kind of what we already knew. No one had any problems with Darth Maul in episode one. Not a single person was like, you know what, Darth Maul, he wasn't that cool. I no, I don't need to learn to butterfly kick because I saw Darth Maul do it. Like, of course, all of that needs to happen. Darth Maul is this driving force, and so right there is this visual thing. We already understood the film visually. It's just when these characters are not being what we need them to be, which is us. We're hearing this flat dialogue, this problematic thing. And it's not resonating with us. It's not giving us that Star Wars thing we wanted this whole time. And that drives us to this cultural space of the film and perhaps a resolution to the cultural problem of episode one, right? So episode one was this weird moment where everyone was just like, it's too big to fail. How could it be bad? It's Star Wars. And there it was with this real jarring moment where Star Wars itself had this like crisis, this internal crisis where, wait a minute, we didn't get Star Wars in episode one, episode two, episode three. We have these problems that occur. And so it's a real odd moment for Star Wars, but you see it kind of foreshadowed when you get a lot of the edits that are happening in 456 in right 97, right before the 99 release of episode one. For a bit of context, I was just a kid at that time. I was born in '86, so episode one wasn't this like amazing disappointment for me, but at its core, I like went home and then watched the VHS Star Wars Eps 456. I wasn't overly drawn into episode one, although Qui-Gon Jinn was the man, you know? So that's kind of where Star Wars culture is happening. You have these digital remasters leading into episode one, and it becomes this very problematic space for, say, a Star Wars fan who was looking to like draw their kids further into this, who was looking to relive that glory of growing up with Star Wars. And then episode one causes all these odd moments for Star Wars culture. And so it's good to stop and pause on that. And so I don't know where you folks stand on these things, but let's definitely get into it on the discussion board. See what your take on episode one is. So gang, I will catch you there and I'll catch you in the rest of the vids. Be good.